everyone. Welcome to Redemptive Psych. My name is John Bodine, and today we're dipping into a conversation about self-actualization and how self-actualization, when taken too far, unfortunately becomes a toxin in the human spirit and in human pursuits. Now, I want to start off by saying that I highly value many of the proponents of self-actualization. One of the fathers of the movement and the concept, Abraham Maslow, a famous psychologist, he had a lot to say about it. And this is one of his popular quotes about it: what a man or woman or whoever, what a man can be, he must be. Meaning that he was implying that the journey of a human being is to fill out the skills and the abilities and the aspects that lay there in potential for a person to become. And I agree with that. I think that a human being is uniquely positioned to be directed and to some extent direct themselves to fill out, to become more, to become richer, to become deeper. But like many things in life, there is a fatal flaw there. And that is when a person decides that it's incumbent upon them and only their effort and their will that they will become all that they can be. Now, I went through a period in my life, around halfway through high school or so and through part of college, when I started to rely more and more on some of the proponents of self-actualization. I felt disillusioned with a lot of the aspects of the Christian community that I frankly could no longer stomach. And many of those things still today, I think, are real issues. So it's not like I've come full circle and I'm going to condemn self-actualization, but being someone who has tested many of these concepts of self-actualization and have gone through periods where I really did just try to rely on my own strength and my own will, I can say it doesn't work. It works in terms of acquiring some new things and making small changes to your life, and sometimes those changes are better, for sure, but it will rarely give you what you're actually seeking, even if you don't know what you're actually seeking. And I think most humans are seeking total transformation and redemption to a point where they can actually become all that they want and feel that they can be. And here is revealed some of the merits, some of the utility in self-actualization, because all of us have images or ideas of our own inner greatness. And I don't say that in a megalomania way or in an egotistical way, but we have the sense of a future self that we can really become more, and we can be the kind of person that we respect and that helps out when there's an issue, and that is capable and that is reliable. And these visions are great because they're pulling us towards something better, right? However, they can also be grounds for really difficult self-destruction when it leads to comparison or idealizing that future image, even getting to a point of self-deification, which is a whole other thing, right? So the merit of it is that of self-actualization is that it is true that we are not all that we can be. And in the content that we'll be addressing, specifically personality psychology, personality types, self-development, spiritual transformation, all those things, there is a great temptation that I have seen in those communities to use personality psychology as a tool for self-actualization. If you go anywhere, any educational field or discipline or whatever, there are people there who think they have the secret to life. And it's usually a set of beliefs and some knowledge, and usually accompanied by useful insight, sometimes profound insight. But ultimately, it usually just becomes another thing to fill the slot of using our own power to try and fix ourselves and fix others around us. And ultimately, it just doesn't work. And this is where the idol of self-actualization is most revealed here by self-effort. Ultimately, it is a belief, it is a reliance on me, on myself. And being someone who has utilized a lot of these techniques and has sought a lot of tools that I could fix, that I could use to fix myself or fix life, there are two very slippery edges there. And one is the self-reliance, which is, I'm going to do it myself, which is becomes very easy to turn into pride or pushing others away that you could benefit from their help. But you've decided that no, I'm going to do it on my own, for myself, and no one's going to help me. That's the first spot that people slip off. And the second one is, once you get to a point where you get really good at these techniques or tools, and you're capable and you're helpful and you're insightful, this tendency, this temptation to self-deify, to basically fall in love with your own image, as Narcissus did over that pool that eventually became his own demise. That is the other temptation. There's that saying, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And this is something that self-actualization and the proponents of it rarely take into account, because it's always the pursuit, the journey, getting there. But what happens when you actually do get there? When you become extremely fit, healthy, smart, confident, you have an abundance of relationships, of resources, you're wealthy, you can live as you please, you go where you please. What happens at that point? Often not good things, because it's so easy to fall in love with something that you feel that you did, and it becomes ultimately a poisonous cycle where the image of yourself, of your own work, of your own effort, is something that will boost you up in a way that's ultimately going to lead to some demise in the future. And that's a pattern that, if you watch people, especially many successful people, that's a pattern that is there for them, because falling in love with oneself, with one's own effort or ability or accomplishments, doesn't have anything life-giving ultimately to it. There is, however, somewhat of a bitter pill here, and this is something that C.S. Lewis pointed out in one of his quotes, which I'll read shortly, but I like to call it the anything but God syndrome, where he basically says that the entirety of human history is this really long and terrible story of every man, of mankind, looking every single place but God to make him happy. And ultimately, the motivation for that is self-effort. Where can I go where it'll be me that does it, and I can credit myself in some way, and not have to surrender my will to God. And it is a bitter pill at first, because you feel like you're losing yourself when you start to take that step. You feel like you almost feel like it's the opposite of self-actualization. I am totally denying and repressing and killing myself, killing my metaphorical self, in order to become a slave to God, basically, and do his bidding and give up all that I am. And that's how it feels at first. However, it's not the case. And that belief that I just described of exchanging freedom for chains is a very common feeling, a very common belief within communities that are, believe in self-actualization as a fundamental value. And that leads to this other Lewis quote here, a very famous quote of his, where he's basically saying, well, I'll just read it briefly. The more we let God take us over, the more truly ourselves we become. In this field of personality psychology, this is a brutal quote, because much of psychology is a history of some very smart, insightful people who have not taken this step, who have looked everywhere but God for insight, for solutions. And I will say there's a lot of value there. I'm a strong proponent of reading and encountering other people that are outside of your belief system. That is one of my main issues with Christians, is that they only consult people who believe the same things that they do. They read only books that are within their narrow purview of belief, and it's not a healthy or mature thing to do. But what Lewis is pointing out here is a fundamental reality that even though as you surrender to God, it may feel like you're getting chains on you, but it's not that way at all. It's this weird paradox that as soon as you are able to relinquish, or allow him to help you relinquish your ego, basically, then you start to find what's actually there, what's under there. And it may not be so pretty at first, but at least you start to see with some clarity who you actually are. So zooming out a little bit here to a more general view, in my opinion, there are two choices that each person makes. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, it doesn't matter. It's still a choice. And the first one is a worldview from the Greek philosopher Protagoras, who said famously, "Man is the measure of all things." Man, my effort, the pursuit of optimizing and building up me is my purpose. Man, myself, is the measure of all things. That's the first path. That is the path of self-actualization, with me as the captain steering the boat, and wherever I go and whatever I do, whatever I accomplish, it'll be because of me, because of my choices and my achievements. The second option is Solomon, who says that we are to lean not on our own understanding. And the rest of the verse talks about acknowledging God in everything that you do, everything, every aspect of your life. And it's a promise there that any aspect that you acknowledge him with and allow him to come influence, that path will be made straight and made smooth. And that is, if that's true, wow. I don't know why more people don't do that. But those are the two choices. It's either me, my own effort, or allowing God to come with you everywhere that you go. Those are the two extremes. Most of us exist somewhere in the middle, right? I want to wrap up by saying that self-actualization is, in my opinion, also a Christian ethic, that it just has to be interpreted a little bit differently. We can become all that we should be and could be, but it requires God to come with us. It requires him to actually lead that path much of the time. He's interested in us fulfilling our potential, in us becoming more healthy and more having more knowledge and being able to express ourselves and pursue things and achieve things. I think he's extremely interested in that. But at some level, it's like, for what purpose? What is your purpose in pursuing that? Once we become transformed by God, like I mentioned in the last episode, John Eldredge's book, Waking the Dead, where he makes the argument that at the moment of transformation, your heart actually becomes something that is good in its essence. And here, a Christian can start to trust their own heart. And this is the other side of surrendering ourselves to God, that we actually can start to trust ourselves a little bit more. And that's where beautiful quotes like this one from Rumi ring on a whole new level. Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. I love that. And I think that is capturing a glimpse of life that is possible, but it can't be achieved through self-effort, because as many of you, I'm sure, know, especially if you reflect on moments of your life, I'm sure there's been a lot of times where you thought your heart was going somewhere and pulling you somewhere, and it just didn't pull you in the right direction, or you misinterpreted it, or it just ended up not being so good. I can point to a lot of moments in my life where I'm a very wanty person. I'm a very passionate person, and I'm always looking for new ways to improve life and new goals to go after. But many of those things fail because It was drawn by self-effort, and it just led to more misery and more distance from myself, and not really understanding why things got worse. I will say, though, that I believe there are moments where every single human being, regardless of their beliefs, is going to get little glimpses into this version of what they really love, and what kind of person they could be and would have to be in order to pursue what they loved. But again, when it's directed through self-effort, it doesn't lead to where they want it to go. So ultimately, where we end up, if you have experienced that transformation, I encourage you to think about if you can trust your heart a little bit more. Many of the Christians, most of the Christians I've met, are still very suspicious of themselves. And like we talked about last time, do not allow themselves to go inward, to be drawn into the essence of their identity. And until that happens, until we familiarize ourselves with our own heart, we will continue to be strangers to ourselves. And somewhere between the first lecture of Christians being fearful to go inward, and then this self-actualization, where we are always going inward and always propelling ourselves, somewhere in the middle there is where the work of this channel is going to take place, where we are committed to self-improvement and self-understanding, and knowing ourselves and using that knowledge to guide in different aspects of our lives. But if God does not come with us on that journey, then it's ultimately going to end up, as all journeys do, directed by self-effort, which is not anywhere that good or not much better, and sometimes worse than when you started. So that is my commitment here, to go over the tools to increase self-awareness, but to bring God with that knowledge, and then allow Him to decide the best application of that knowledge. And I would encourage you to make that same commitment, or at the very least, just to think about what that might be like, to allow God in a little bit more into the daily pursuits that you have. So that's it for this video. Thanks for stopping by. And moving forward, we're going to start to move into some of the more personality-specific content, and hopefully talk about the types soon. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.